not yet. We have not used transistors, but we could try that. And in fact, this kind of conferences, interdisciplinary conferences, allow us to collaborate, no? And to establish new technologies by using that kind of collaborations. Perhaps it could be possible to do that with this kind of transistors, but now we are using another technology that is very sensitive as well, and that is called the photoplethysmography. That kind of technology, it uses the light in order to apply pulsatile light in order to obtain responses from the blood. We can observe what is happening with the oxygenation of the neural tissue, and we can observe indirectly the electrical activity. That is also very important, and we are using in that case kind of transistors to amplify the signals obtained by photodiodes. Thank you. Okay.
No, que estar para la próxima que se les apoya. No.
Okay. Dos. Thanks, Dr. Díaz Majares. Very presentation.
Very much.
Okay, the next talk is going to be held by Dr. Egor Hugo Cededo Núñez, Applied Optics Laboratory, Physics Faculty, Universidad Veracruzana, Mexico. His talk is about some experimental arrangements developed in a proven prototype ambit.
Next speaker this afternoon is Dr. Héctor Hugo Cededo Núñez, Applied Optics Laboratory, Physics Faculty, Universidad Veracruzana, Mexico. He's going to talk about experimental setups in biophotonics. Héctor Hugo obtained his PhD in optics at the Institute of Astrophysics, Optics and Electronics in Puebla, Mexico. He had a postdoctoral position in 2002 at the Center for Photonics Technology in Blacksburg in US. He's now a tenure full professor and co-founder of the Applied Optics Laboratory at the same faculty, Universidad Veracruzana. His recent work has utilized optical fibers to trap and manipulate matter. Also, he's involved with optical fiber sensors, biophotonics, and optical metrology topics. It's member of Optica, OSA, SPAD, and the Mexican Academy of Optics. Welcome to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Eduardo. Let me see. Okay. I'm going to try to speak loud. Doesn't use the microphone. Well, let me draw a picture, something. Okay, very good one. This slide. Okay. Okay. This we have, for example, plus engineering. Here we should have data science. Okay, and here maybe we have something like electromagnetic radiation, that this means a signal of this mean light. something like that. And all that should be related with biophotonics, all that. So can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? This means that biophotonics is not only light, it's not only optics. It is related with engineering, like electronics, like mechanics, and also with the acknowledgement of the light. I mean, in physics, for example, and the interaction of light, as we reviewed yesterday. Also, is involved with data science or data analysis. So we can take a look about biophotonics in all that context. So it's not only physics, not only electronics, or not only bio. Okay. Well, yesterday I tried to justify this topic related with the topic of this meeting. So yesterday I mentioned that in this case, electronics, the trends in electronics should be related with optoelectronics in the case of biophotonics, or in the case of optics, or in the case of light. Also, that informatics, for this case, should be related with optics or biophotonics, in this case, with data analysis. And related with health, we can identify biophotonics. So, certainly not, we have to talk now in any research, we have to talk, or we have to consider several subjects or several areas of the science. Okay, let's start. Yesterday, there was a question about how is related light and optics with biophotonics. We are going to today, or in this talk, I'm going to try to explain that. So first, we need to remember how is related biophysics. Well, biophysics is related with biology, chemistry, with medicine, with physics. We know that. But what about biophotonics? Well, biophotonics is related, or it comes from physics, optics, photonics, but also with biophysics. So biophotonics can involve all about biophysics, but also about light and optics. Here is a map of the physics. It's only to locate where we are. So in our case, about light, about optics, we are here in this part of physics, in the classic physics. But also, as we know, there are other areas of the physics, like quantum physics, relativity, etc. Well, an important word here should be photonics. Yeah. Well, let me explain that thoroughly. Photonics is a word similar to electronics. In the case of electronics, the idea is to control information basically with electrons. But in the case of photonics, the idea is to control that information with photons. That means with light. So in general, that is a definition of photonics. But it comes from, that word comes from 19th, when somebody, I don't know who or where, considered several topics from optics. Some topics that we reviewed yesterday. For example, lasers, interference, optical fibers, etc. So with all that information, they established to define photons. About bio, this should be a map. We can find inside cell, the study of inside cells, of the study of cells, also the study of medicine, organisms, genetics, also growth. Well, for the case of biophotonics, we mainly deal with cells, organisms, and medicine. But as we just listened in the previous talk, now they are working with genetics. I mean, this area related with optogenetics. So, biophotonics, we can define as an extension of photonics. That means that it's a kind of fusion between the photonics and the bio, in this case, biology, but not only biology, also with medicine, basically with biology and medicine. We can consider biophotonics like the interaction of light with matter, but in this case, the interaction of light with organic matter. Yeah, it's more specific. The interaction of light with matter. In the case of biophotonics, the goal is, one of the goals is to detect early any disease using light, obviously, or use new ways or new kind of light sources in order to provide phototherapies, for example, or new therapies. Also, with biophotonics, we can find feedback in science. What does it mean that with biophotonics, some discoveries in biophotonics can be useful in material science, for example, or even if we have a new discoveries in material science, we can use that in biophotonics. So it's a feedback in biophotonics. Well, we should have new opportunities to research, and not only in physics, but even in chemistry or engineering has a role in that part. All that related with bio, that's mean health or biology, for example. Well, this is a general drawing where we can find the overlap between two areas, in this case, photonics and biomedical science. For example, photonics, then here from photonics, we can identify photonics technology for biomedical sciences, for example. And from biomedical sciences, we can identify biomaterial for photonics technology. So, can you see, they should be related in the case to study organic material, organic matter. Well, what is the interaction of light in biophotonics? Well, the interaction is with organism, and that does mean we can use light to research all the body, for example, or not that only that, we can use the light to research organs such as brain, for example, tissues, cells, or organelles. Organelles are these organisms that are inside the cells. So you can cover all different sciences and different parts of related with biology or medicine. Here, there are some branches of biophotonics. We can now, it's possible to classify or identify different branches for biophotonics, to study in biophotonics. For example, imaging, biometrics, therapeutics, detection, or storage. As you can see, there are some examples. For example, imaging, we can use infrared thermography to detect some changes in the body. or I mean, disease, or yeah, any disease. For example, in biometric, we can use blood oxygen sensor. Maybe now we are familiar with that because when recently we have to use that in the COVID problem. For example, for detection, we can use some kind of sensor to cancer detection, or in the case of surgery, for laser handpiece scalpel. As you know, now in some surgeries, they are using a laser in order to cut and to dry immediately that cut. Okay, there is another point of view about biophotonics and some areas that it has. For example, we can distinguish in biophotonics part of diagnostics or another part for therapeutics. And as you can see, for example, about diagnostic, we can identify bioimaging or optical diagnostic devices. And in the case of therapeutic, we can identify light-guided or activated therapies. Or the same in therapeutic, we can identify light-based devices. So, and there are some examples. But also, we can identify for biophotonics information technology for data analysis and management. So, for this conference, I think it's suitable this topic because you can identify what is the relationship in electronics, as I mentioned, and in data science or data analysis. Well, now I'm going to explain or to show some proofs, some tests we have done in our laboratory. The first one is related with the interference and diffraction. I mentioned yesterday about interference and diffraction. Here we try to develop is to recover the 3D form of small elements, that mean microscope elements. For example, that are gigaspores or spores. So the main goal here is, as I mentioned, to know the form in 3 dimensions of that small particles. Why we need to know the form of some parameters of that microstructures? Because we don't know exactly how they are. We can see how they are in 2 dimensions, but in 3 dimensions it's not clear. So, for example, there are many arrangements, there are many setups. But for example, we can use an interferometer. Here you can see an interferometer. The interferometer is formed by these 2 beams that comes from this laser. So the laser comes into this interferometer. This is a Mach-Zehnder interferometer. So one beam is a reference that goes to a CCD camera, for example. And the other beam goes to the sample. The sample should be here, I guess here, in a microscope. So with these 2 beams, we can form an interference pattern. And with that interference pattern, we can obtain the form, the 3D form, or the 3D dimension of that microorganism. Well, in our case, we did a measure in a static manner, in a static form. But actually, you can do that in a dynamic way, in a dynamic form. What does that mean? That you can observe the microorganism moving, not fixed, moving. In this case, we are. I am showing you some results in a static way. But now the main goal, the development are in that point to develop a 3D visualization of a small object but moving. Okay, that is called dynamic holography. Thank you. Okay. Well, another interest or that is to work with optical tracking, but I am not to show you all the results. But let me tell you that in this part we have been interested in some physical parameters, such as the speed of the microparticles that we trap, or the forces that is involved in this trapping. Okay. One of the most important results is that we have reproduced the trapping using two optical fibers. If you trap a microparticle in not in a static or not in a fixed position, I mean, if you try to trap a bacteria or a microparticle inside a liquid, should be very difficult. But if you use light, maybe you can trap, such as we did here. So, and then what was there? Then you can study the structure, you can study the composition, or you can study the medium with that trap. So there are many, there are several, should be several possibilities to research, and not only one kind of particle. Well, I don't know how many times. Okay, thank you. This is another interesting result that we reproduce. In this case, we reproduce the fact that the light can pull or can project the growing of a part of a cell. So in this case, we use as a kind of cell, and we put light switching in this way, and then we study if the light induces the growing to in that direction, in the direction of the light. And one of our students did a statistic in order to see if that is happening. And of course, we obtain a positive result, but it's not easy. It's not so clear that light is pulling or light is only that is involved in this phenomenon. Probably there are another consideration that are related with the growing of this part of the cell. Okay. Well, I think it's all for today. I mean, in my talk, because I have several results, but let me only conclude the following. In the case of biophotonics, in our laboratory, we are focusing in the use of optical instruments, optical setups to use the light, and phenomena from the light, such as interferometry, optical fibers, spectrometry, microscopy, or optical tracking. So you can use for biophotonics different configurations and different concepts, but not only that, you can be all that activities should be related with other areas of the science. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have any questions?
Yes.
Lab, I think to do some biophotonics, kind of like Dr. Mahares showed us before, or what would be the direction
Yeah, thank you. Well, the first that the first goal that we have is to develop some optical setups. That was the first. We are doing that. But something is difficult for us and for many of us is to be connected or to be related with, for example, medical doctors in order to solve a problem. So that is the next step. We are going to try to show this to that kind of people, medical doctors, in order to try to apply that in specific problems. We are trying to do that, but we don't have results at this moment in that direction.
Which is the physical phenomenon that occur between the light and the biological material?
The interaction. I mean, I don't know if you were yesterday, but I explained that the light can interact with the organic material, and in that interaction, there are many phenomena such as energy conversion, such as scattering, and you can use all that effects in order to detect, for example, the structure, changes in the structure, or to change to detect a composition, or to detect some molecules, or quantities of certain elements, something like that.
Thank you.
There is no around here, Professor Anirban.
Okay, let's go to continue with the
No, then Lizeth
technical session
Noriega.
number 2.
Please
We
share
are going to
your screen, please.
listen to the presentation of Lizeth Noriega de los Santos. Please.
We can see Lizeth Noriega, so you can share your screen.
I think you don't have the permission to share.
¿Le diste privilegios? Jair?
Sí. Yes. There are no restrictions for sharing. You can share your screen.
Okay. So can you
We are ready, wherever you want to start.
Okay, thank you. Hi everyone, good afternoon. Today I am going to talk to you a little bit about one of the research projects that I was developing during my PhD. And the name of this talk is Molecular Study of oxyvanadium 5 complexes with involved in breast cancer. So, PhD, the only thing I knew about vanadium was its position on the periodic table, and I was aware that it was a metal. It's a atomic number. I used to believe that actually was toxic for the body, or at least for human beings. But then, when I was making research and reading a lot of papers regarding to vanadium content, I figuring out that actually the chemistry of vanadium is very versatile, especially when we talk about its properties as metallo. And the activity that we can find in is as antibiotic and anti-cancerogenic. talk about cancer and actually about cancer, it is well known that it is a public health program. It's the first type of cancer detected among women in South America. And in USA, when they every single year do this statistical research about cancer in general, they find out that actually 31% of all the estimated cases of cancer will be correspond to breast cancer. And cancer has a good prognosis when it's detected on time. It is the second risk of cancer death among women. So that's why it is important to looking for different therapeutic alternatives in order to assess. That's why in that research project we were center our attention on oxygenable compounds, especially those that I'm going to refer in this talk as B1, B2, and B3 compounds. These three compounds were tested by an experimental group, and they find out their anticancer properties when they investigated on MCF. So what do they have in common? These compounds is that they possess the vanadium atom with a oxidation number 5. So they have this nitrogen with its double bond with this carbon that is the characteristic of the sheet base. So all these three compounds share that structure. So we ask ourselves, if these compounds could act as an anticancerogenic? Is there a possibility that they could interact with a certain protein? And then we find out that actually what there is not something easy to assess. There are several things that are altering here. And in 2011, Hanahan and Weinberg they proposed the hallmarks of cancer that involve, for example, evaluating suppressors, enable repeated mortality, resistance cell death, and these hallmarks are related with cell cycle alteration. So in hospital, when they have to be divided, they do it by different phases. These phases are rotated by different checkpoints, and these checkpoints cause the cell to continue the division or to stop in a specific phase. On cancer cells, those checkpoints are altered, and then cancer cells can be divided over the time. So that's why we wanted to explore if there are possibilities that the vanadium compounds could interact with certain proteins that are in those checkpoints. So among many proteins, we decided to incorporate to the study the protein CDC25 that is a phosphatase and has a phosphatase means that it removes phosphate group from the substrate. And we wanted to explore if there was a possibility that all compounds could interact in an allosteric site that is 15 angstroms away from the active site, since there are reports that this site would be interesting for potential inhibitors of this. So we want to study ATP2 protein. This is a kinase protein, and as a kinase, what this protein do is to take a phosphate group from ATP and then move it to the substrate in order to activate all the proteins. And AT2 is related with remote metastasis of tumor cells. And so we studied the protein HP2, which is also a phosphatase. So what we do was to find the extract structure from a protein data bank. And once found that, we carry out docking analysis study using Autodoc 4.2. We use a semi-flexible methodology. That means that the protein was considered as a rigid entity, while the ligands were considered free to rotate their own bond. And in the case of the one complex, if we can see here, this is a salt. So the cationic part of this salt that belongs to to this part is having a positive charge, and we have the anionic part. And the anionic part is the one that was of our interest because it has the like state, so the shift state. So that's why we decided to carry out the docking using the anionic part of the vanadium one. And finally, in order to consider if our data were good or not, we decided to consider the energy obtained from the ligands that were already bonded on the X-ray structures on the PDBs that we get, and compare those energies to the one that we get. So what we found, for the protein PDC25B, we found that all the three vanadium complexes interact with this protein. And so it's even the energy or the binding free energy interaction is even better than the one that was presented by the ligand that was considered as our control value. And among these three complexes, the anionic part of vanadium compound was the one that was presenting the better binding and activity energy. The types of interactions that was presented among these proteins and the compounds were hydrophobic and also hydrogen bonds. Regarding to AKT2, this also the binding free energy interactions show us that it is possible for these complexes to interact with this protein. Yet, when we compare these energy values with the ones that correspond to the ligand found on the X-ray structures, these energies are above the ligand value. So that's why we can conclude that for this protein, at least, these compounds are feeling less affinity to interact with this protein compared to the ligand found on the X-ray structure. And something similar we found in the protein SIC2, and vanadium binding energy interactions, but again, compared with the ligand, these interactions are above and therefore less, feeling less affinity for these. So what we can conclude for this, we can conclude that 3-oxidovanadium 5 complexes were found to be successfully explored using Outlook 4.2 software. In the case of the interactions energy, we can conclude also that all the complexes can find all three enzymes. And when we consider only the protein PDC, we can conclude that the anionic part of this one is a compound that can interact better with this protein. However, if we consider the range of the binding energies, it can be suggest that vanadium compounds and the anionic part of vanadium 1 can interact with several proteins or enzymes. Therefore, it could be interesting to find out if there are other proteins to which this compound could still or could be interacting with those proteins in a mode. So basically, that's all for the talk of today. So thank you so much for your attention. And if you have any questions, so please let me know.
Any questions?
Okay, there is a question from the audience. If there is a toxicity, if you use vanadium? Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Did you ask me if there is a toxicity using formalin compound?
The question is if there is toxicity when you use vanadium.
Yes, actually, when you use any components, you are testing them against any kind of cell, they are going to present toxicity. The real question here is what's the concentration which different components can sense that toxicity. So in the case of the group that they did report previously, they give the concentrations, and in order to use them, there was needed to use a very low concentration of this compound. Something important here is that these compounds haven't been tested in vivo, just in vitro. That means that only with the cell culture. So therefore, it's something interesting to explore. I don't have any specific value of what would be the concentration at which these compounds can be
I have another question. When you use Autodoc, the parameters of the atoms are introduced by yourself, or the software has these parameters?
No, Autodoc doesn't have the parameters for certain metals, and vanadium is included. So that's why, yes, we have to add manually, and then the program can run the document.
Okay, thank you. There is another question. Okay, there is no more questions from the audience. Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, next one.
Professor Anirban, is everyone here?
No, Professor
Pawan Kumar,
Pawan.
José Antonio Piceno. No.
Okay, next one is José Antonio Piceno, is going to be lead.
Okay, the next presentation is from José Antonio Piceno. Is a computational study of the contribution of nucleoside conformations to 3D structure of DNA. Please go ahead.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is José Antonio Piceno Martinez. I am from here, from the Benemérita Universidad Autónoma de Puebla, and our paper has the name Computational Study of the Contribution of Nucleoside Conformations to Three-Dimensional Structure of DNA. Here is the content of our paper. We have a short introduction, and the methods we use are molecular mechanics and quantum mechanics. Later, we have the results brought in two sections, and finally, the conclusions. First, let's see the introduction. The DNA duplex is a complex consists of two antiparallel complementary polynucleotide chains, and each chain is a combination of aromatic bases, deoxyribose sugar, and phosphate groups. In this work, we consider the fragment of DNA chain named nucleoside. A nucleoside consists of deoxyribose sugar attached to the aromatic base. And we study the contribution of these subunits to the conformational variability of local three-dimensional structure of DNA duplex. For DNA, we have four natural bases. We have two pyrimidines, cytosine and thymine, and two purines, adenine and guanine. And the DNA chains are joined together by hydrogen bonds between the bases, forming what we know as Watson and Crick pairs. In these pairs, cytosine paired with guanine and thymine with adenine. Now let's talk about the method we used. Two models can be used to study the molecular systems. One of them is the molecular mechanics model with a low cost of computational resources, which allows us to model geometric structures for various molecular systems, despite of its size or complexity. In this method, we use classical mechanics to emulate molecular systems. We consider atoms as soft spheres, and we take into consideration the Born-Oppenheimer approximation. The nuclear motions are determined in terms of a potential energy surface, and the system potential energy is calculated as a function of the nuclear coordinates using force fields. We use these force fields to make the geometrical optimizations and to find the energy minima using the AMBER-21 software. By the other hand, we have the quantum mechanics model. This one can be used for modeling of rather small molecules because it has a high computational cost. Its principal objective is to solve the time-independent Schrödinger equation. However, the systems with more than two particles have no analytic solution. Therefore, certain approximations are used, like the Born-Oppenheimer approximation, and for solving the system wave function, we need another approximation. In this one, the molecular orbital are considered as a linear combination of the atomic orbitals. Since no analytic form can be given for atomic orbitals, we need the numeric models, like the Hartree-Fock self-consistent field method, the molar perturbation theory, MP, and the density functional theory, DFT. All of this in the Gaussian 9 software in collaboration with the National Laboratory of Supercomputing. The molecular geometry can be assigned in terms of bond length, valence angles, and torsion angles. In the figure, we can see the torsion angles for the deoxynucleoside monophosphate on the left and for the deoxynucleoside on the right. The values of the torsion angles can help us to describe the structure, three-dimensional structure of the molecules. In particular, three nucleoside angles, the angle G, delta, and gamma, are important for the classification of the conformations in DNA. In the table, we have the torsion angles for the deoxynucleoside in conformations of DNA BB00, AA00, and BB02. And the glucosidic angle, G, is the torsion angle between the sugar and its attached base. And it has two main orientations. The anti-orientation with more than 200 degrees, like here, and the syn orientation close to the 60 degrees. Now let's see the results. Here we have energy minima of the deoxynucleosides corresponding to the syn orientation, with the G torsion angle close to the 60 degrees. For all four natural nucleosides, deoxycytosine, deoxythymidine, deoxyguanosine, and deoxyadenosine. These conformations have an intermolecular H1 between the base and the sugar and the hydrogen of the sugar. And we have more results for all the nucleosides, for deoxycytosine, deoxythymidine, deoxyadenosine, and deoxyguanosine in three conformations: BB00, AA00, and BB02 for all the four nucleosides, and with both methods, with molecular mechanics using 3 force fields, and for quantum mechanics using DFT and LB2. So we have a lot of energy minima with all their torsion angles expressed in tables in the result sections of our paper. For each nucleoside, we have the table with the conformations BB00, AA00, and BB02, and with both methods. For molecular mechanics, the force fields BSC1, and for quantum mechanics with MP2. In the tables, we can see the difference between the torsion angles here, and we set the energy value of BB00 as 0 in each method. In order to see the energy difference between each family. And for each nucleoside, we have a figure in 3 conformations: BB00, AA00, and BB02. In the figures, we can see the difference between the torsion angles between the families. And in this page, we have the table and the figure for the deoxyadenosine. And looking at the energy values, we can see that BB00 is more favorable because AA00 and BB02 have more energy. In this page, we have the table and the figure for the other purine, the deoxyguanosine. And here we can see the same energy behavior with BB00 as the most favorable family for both methods. In this page, we have the figure and the table for the deoxythymidine. And once again, we have the same behavior. We have BB00 as the most favorable family for both methods. And finally, for the toxicity, we have an exclusion of the behavior. Only for this nucleoside, we found that BB00 is the most favorable family for the molecular mechanic methods. But now, AA00 have less energy for quantum mechanic methods. Here is an interesting exclusion between both methods, and we can do more research in the future to clarify this energetic behavior. And finally, we have the conclusions, where we highlight these points. The calculation results of the oxynucleosides using various methods demonstrate the existence of minimal energy structures corresponding to 3 conformational classes of elemental fragments of Watson-Crick DNA duplex. The most deep minima for each 4 nucleosides obtained by various methods correspond to the most populated B1 and A1 conformation families of the duplex. And well, these findings can be considered as additional amazing characteristics of molecular structure of the main molecule of life. And that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Please.
My question is, what is the purpose of this work? I mean, you make a conformational analysis of these nucleotide with a sugar, and you use different force fields, and you use different first principle methods and initial methods. But so, what is the conclusion? For what should it be good? Is it for the parametrization of a force field method, or is there another more fundamental scientific question behind this conformational analysis?
Well, the main the reason is because we were looking to find the characteristics of the DNA families in small parts of the DNA chain. So we have characteristics in those small fragments that can be extended to all the DNA molecule.
Do you believe that this is transferable? Because if you go really to the DNA, you have not only this one unit. Yeah. You have the units all around. You have the phosphor backbone, and if we have done calculations of DNA strands, which are something like 600 or 800 atoms. I don't remember exactly. And I mean the confinement you have from the backbone is not neglected, because you don't have the backbone.
Yeah, with all the considering all the structure of DNA, it has so many interactions. But if we find at least some characteristics in the simple fragments, it's easier to study with, for example, with quantum mechanics methods to study small fragments. So we can study DNA duplex with hundreds of atoms and so many electrons. So it's easier to study small fragments and to find some characteristics that can be related to all the structure of DNA. Thank you.
Is there any other question? No, any other question? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, let's continue with our session. The next presentation is from Pawan Kumar Singh. Is a multi-level stress detection using ensemble filter-based feature selection methodology. Please.
Okay, we can see you and we can hear you. You can start whatever you want. Okay, now we can see your presentation.
We can use you. Okay.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor for me to be here for my very first presentation of my paper in this conference. And I thank you all for having me. My name is Arham Reza, and I'm going to present the paper on the topic stress detection using ensemble filter-based feature selection methodology. Let's begin with it. So we are all very much aware of the word stress, as each of us has gone through it at least once in our life. It usually has negative impact on the human health system, and it causes physical, emotional changes in us. It has no age bar, as it affects every person of every age in many different ways, whether it's about student facing studies or examination pressure, or a businessman facing economic recession, or a woman facing daily life responsibilities. It leads to illness like anxiety, depression, headache, eating disorder, etc. So which can further lead to severe health problems like dementia, cardiovascular diseases, and especially it has been increased after the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. Earlier, stress was detected with the help of questionnaire method, but with the advancement of technology and effective computing wearable devices, we are able to monitor physiological signals more easily. So we decided to solve this problem with the help of machine learning. So I would like to describe the three main contributions of the paper very briefly. So first of all, we have tried to propose ensemble filter-based feature selection for detection of stress. So two mainly filter-based methods that we have used are mutual information and Pearson correlation coefficient. And based on the ranking obtained, we have selected top key percent rank features and fit to our three most popular classification models like decision tree, random forest, k nearest neighbor. Our method has been tested on the publicly available VSAT dataset, and we obtain an accuracy of 99.9% for subject dependent and 96.8% for subject independent case. So this is the basic workflow pipeline of our model. It includes data preprocessing, feature extraction using statistical features, implementation of two filter-based feature selection, and three popular classification algorithms, and finally the four class levels for detection, that is baseline, amusement, stress, and meditation. I'll be discussing these points further precisely. First of all, we will look on our data set which we have used. So I have used publicly available VSAT dataset. The data has been recorded with two different devices, that is chest-based and wrist-based. And the data sets includes the data of 15 participants, which includes 4 affective conditions. that is baseline, which is the neutral state of the participants, amusement, which the subjects watch 11 sets of funny video clips to make them funny, stress, the third point, the participants were exposed to stress, which consists of public speaking and given some mental arithmetical task. And finally, the meditation to de-excite the participants and bring them back to the neutral stress after stress and amusement condition. So here we see some basic physiological signals which are included in this data set, like electrodermal activity, electrocardiogram, electromyography, respiration, body temperature, and 3-axis acceleration. So let's begin with the data pre-processing part. We decided to work with the only chess data set, and the data set contains 8 levels from 0 to 7. We removed the level 0, 5, 6, and 7 as they were irrelevant as mentioned in the dataset. So the 4 labels 1, 2, 3, 4 indicates baseline, stress, amusement, and meditation, which I have described earlier. We have computed the interquartile range for each feature, and outliers were removed according to it. Initially, we had around 42 lakh physiological signals values for each subject, and after pre-processing, it was reduced to 16 lakh values. Our next point is the feature extraction. So we have feature extraction. We have used TS-Fresh package, and the features obtained were mean, max, minimum value, 0.4 quantile, 0.7 quantile, linear trend attribute, intercept, etc. By using TS-Fresh package, we obtained around 6,264 statistical features. So next on, we move to feature selection. So feature selection is very important because the reduced features improve the performance of the model and also reduce the computational cost of the learning model. We have select features module present in the TS-Fresh package. With the help of this module, we obtained 2,764 features. The features so obtained were passed through 2 filter meters separately, and the aggregate rankings were obtained. We fed top T% of the ranked features to the classifier, and we have varied the value of T to select optimal number of features. So here we have one of those filter methods named mutual information. It is based on entropy of the features. It usually measures amount of information obtained about one random variable through the another random variable. So mutual information is equal to 0 or greater than 0. So if the values are larger, the greater the relationship is between the two variables. Another filter-based method is Pearson correlation coefficient, which is very much famous, and we are very much aware of that. It indicates the extent to which the two variables are linearly related. It can be positively related, negatively related, or it can be independent if the value is 0. So here we obtain the score of the features by applying 2 filter method, that is mutual information and Pearson correlation. So after applying these 2 filters, we see that 3-axis accelerometer, temperature, and EDA have greater impact on the target variable. So here is the proposed ensemble filter-based feature selection algorithm, which I have described earlier. We have an entire feature set obtained from the select feature module from TS-Fresh package, where K is the dimension of the original feature. We have set S, which will store the output. So we run a loop for each features to calculate mutual information and Pearson correlation. Based on these rankings, aggregate rankings, we select top T% of the features, and then these features are fed into our 3 classifiers. So in our work, we have performed 2 types of classification. So for the subject dependent, the data is split in 80-20 ratio, and the model is trained with the filtered features obtained. And for the subject independent, we train our model with the 10 subjects, and we tested it with the remaining 5 subjects. Now here comes the result part. We have used 4 standard metrics for evaluation process, which is accuracy, precision, recall, and F1 score for both subject dependent and independent cases. So here is the table of the performance evaluation of our proposed model for the subject dependent and independent case. Like here we can see the 3 popular classifier decision tree, random forest, and k nearest neighbor for both subject dependent and independent. So for subject dependent, it's 99.9% for decision tree, 99.9% for random forest as well, and 99.9% for k nearest neighbor 2. And for subject independent, we have obtained an accuracy of 96% for decision tree, 96.8% for random forest, and 96.5% for k nearest neighbor. So based on these values, we have generated a confusion matrix for the proposed ensemble method, which is for subject dependent and subject independent cases. So here is the comparison table with some of the existing works which have been done earlier. Like we have can see some work which is done earlier, Smith, Sertola, Rashid. They have an accuracy of 93%, 81.6%. And right down below is our model, which is one of the fine result with 96.8%. So here I conclude whatever I have described earlier, like we implemented an ensemble filter-based feature selection to select feature subset. And we have used 3 popular classification models, decision tree, random forest, and k nearest neighbor. And in this experiment, we have worked only with the chase data for our stress detection model. 4th point is for subject dependent, we achieved an accuracy of 99.9%. And for subject independent model, we have achieved an accuracy of 96.8%. So that uses ensemble-based feature selection methodology and TS-Fresh package, so that to convert a time series feature problem into a machine learning problem. So here are some of the basic future work which can be done earlier ahead. So in this method, we have used filter methods. We can use wrapper or embedded method in future for some better accuracy. We have used only 2 best feature selection methods. We can use more than that for overall accuracy of the model. And algorithms like genetic algorithm, particle swarm optimization, and water waves optimization can also be used, which would be of greater advantage. So here are some of the references which I have taken help from for our model and work. Thank you. That's all from my side. Any question you can ask me.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. There is any question from the audience? Here, Professor Eduardo has a question.
Hey, hi, Reza. I know it's late over there. Quick question. How do you take into account like the differences between smartwatches, like a Fitbit or Apple versus $5 one you can buy in China? Your algorithm can take into account all these variances between sensors, chipsets, and all that. Thank you.
Could you hear the question?
Can you please repeat once?
If you can tell us quickly, like if you use different sensors like chipsets with like Apple or Fitbit, or if you buy one for $5 in China, can your algorithm can take into account these differences?
Well, we can take those signals. Actually, I can those algorithm, we can input those signals. It may differ with the quality of the physiological signals we obtain from it. So the quality of the signals may differ.
Thank you for your participation.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from their side?
There is no more questions from this side. Thank you very much for your participation. We are in a break of 15 minutes. Back in 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Sandesh, we are in arrest, so the people is going to come in a few minutes. You can share your screen just to make a a brief proof of the sound and video.
Okay, so will you be playing my video? So
Yes, we can see you in the screen.
okay, sure. Sorry, I don't have an. Yeah, I got that.
Okay, I can see you now. And can you try to share your screen?
Yes, surely I'll try.
Okay, it's just a proof. The people start to come in a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we can see your desktop.
Yeah. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, we can see it. Okay, I will tell you when we start.
Yes, sure.
Thank you very much. We know that it's late there, so sorry for this, but
No.
we had issues with the videos that you sent.
Yes, I understand. It's totally fine. No worry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will tell you in a moment when you can start.
Yes, sure.
Okay, we are ready, Abhishek. Whenever you want to start, we are ready.
Thank you. Let's good afternoon over there. So greetings and good afternoon. I'm Sandesh Sanjeev Farke, author of paper ID 28 from Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati, and my paper title is HI Applications for ADHD Children, a case for enhanced visual representations using novel and adapted guidelines. So this is a short outline of my paper that I've been submitting to TEHI 2022. So it is classified across 7 major parts: introduction, methodology, interviews and surveys, administrating design tasks, analysis, major findings, and conclusion. So before getting into the paper, let's get a short brief of what attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is, which is well known as ADHD. So ADHD is a neurological disorder which is currently generally observed in young children. It is of 3 types: attention deficit type, hyperactivity type, and a combination of attention deficit and hyperactivity type. A major problem faced by these children are in terms of academic challenges, social difficulties, emotional difficulties, and behavioral challenges. Around 6.5 to 8% of the total pediatric population of the world is today living with ADHD. Further, ADHD is incurable in nature. However, a recent and one of the effective way to manage ADHD is through the use of HI applications. So within the HI applications, within the field of this HI applications, there are various types of devices and forms where these applications can be used. They are in form of games, reminders, softwares and applications, voice user interfaces and chatbots, use of virtual reality and augmented reality, computer and audio visual aids. But there's a thing that while using these applications, these need to be designed in a specific manner such that they are interactive, engaging, and attention grabbing. As the major focus is to enhance the attention and to get the children towards the content. So there are major observations in the literature and also through the field study that a good design can have a positive impact on the management of the children living with ADHD. However, a bad design can lead to a negative impact. Thus, there is a need of designing these HI applications in such a way that they are based upon some validated design guidelines. So in this paper, we are identifying these visual design guidelines through expert validation. For this, we use an iterative methodology, which is classified across 4 parts, that is identification, testing, updating and validation of the guidelines, and the final is reporting. So to start this, we had a short literature review, and the aim was to identify if there are any existing guidelines which speak upon the representation of visual content in the HR application. For this, we followed a Prisma type of methodology and had 2 databases, that is Scopus and Web of Sciences. For this, we maintained a flexibility of the time span to include all the possible studies. However, only identify 8 relevant articles, and these articles were also majorly focusing on the use of assistive tools and technology, the user flow, the interface design, or the interaction between the users and the child caregivers. However, there was limited or almost we can say no guidelines that spoke about the visual design or the representation of the content on the of the HI applications. And the ones that were present had the problem that they were judgment based and lacked in validation or were literature review based. So these are the 8 papers that we identified, and surely can be referred to the paper. Then we carried out further an interview and survey with remedial experts who had a wide experience of managing and treating children living with ADHD. So the main aim was to identify some novel guidelines which can be used in such applications that can help the effective management of children living with ADHD. So initially we focused upon the educational content, and a semi-structured interview were carried out with 2 remedial experts, and the questions were based upon Government of India e-content design guidelines. The sessions were quite interactive, and we had the suggestions and recommendations from the remedial experts. However, we couldn't rely just on the 2 experts, so we further went and validated with 8 other experts, and and a questionnaire was generated for them, which was also validated through with another set of research scholars who work with me, and we found out the reliability of the questionnaire was about 86%, and the outcomes were a primary set of expert validated guidelines, which could be used. So we all know we got these primary set of validated guidelines that are expert validated and and further can be tested with the designers. So these were the different 8 categories in which we found these guidelines. These were in form of educational syllabus, which should be given to the children should be same as the regular school. Then the screen layout, audio-visual interactions, frame colors, font size and font type, user flow, and techniques and manage methods to enhance the engagement of the children with the tool. We received the first set, but we know that designers are the one who will design, represent the content and design the user flow and the screens of any application. So it was very necessary to test these with designers. For this, we recruited a set of 9 designers who had a experience within the field, and then we gave them the details and the briefs of our experiment and provided them the aids for redesign. Their feedbacks and queries were recorded in our form, which was written manually in the interactive session with the designers. So what we got is some suggestions, and each suggestion in different 8 categories, and each suggestion was at least was suggested by at least 3 designers. So what we did is then we compiled the results of all the the feedbacks of all the designers, and then updated our guidelines. But now again, there was a need that we need to at least expert validate these guidelines. So we again reviewed, we again validated 5 experts, remedial experts, who had again the experience of plus 10 years, 10 plus years. And the mode was of interaction this time was in person, because this was done the post-COVID. And the place of interaction where we visited the remedial centers and at remedial centers. And what we observed was a positive result that about 96% of the remedial experts supported the study and had had accepted the feedback or the recommendations. And thus we updated our final set of expert validated guidelines. So the major outcomes are that even in the literature we can see that till now there are no expert validated guidelines or tested with children. And people have suggested that expert validated guidelines can stand a strong hold while designing the HI applications, because these experts have an experience of working with the children living with ADHD, and they are the ones who are the major stakeholders and can give a proper feedback. So this was one of the first kind of studies that held a strong hold on identifying a visual representation guidelines. We have these classified across 8 categories, and can be also tested in the future with children living with ADHD and other disorders also. So we would conclude that through the novelty of the work, that these are the very first kind of guidelines that are at least expert tested and can be comprehended easily by the designers while designing the HI applications. The limitations are this, that we had a limited interaction with children living with ADHD, and if we had an opportunity, which we are currently carrying out, to test with the children living with ADHD. And in the further scope that we are, as I said, like we are going forward, is testing with children living with ADHD. then it can be tested across multiple cultures and nations. Then with other disorders like autism and Fragile X syndrome, and also different mediums of interactions like touch, auditory, or a multimodal interactions. And surely these guidelines can be updated over the span of time. These are a few of our references, and thank you. We are open for questions and suggestions, if any.
Okay, there are any questions? It seems that there is no questions. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
From Alexandra de Biovina is a computational study of absorption and emission of a luteolin molecule.
Yo lo voy pasando y ya.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Esteban Delgado Curiel. I'm studying here this master's degrees in applied physics. And today I'm going to talk about what we have been doing today in this semester with the academic group. And the work is titled Computational Study of Absorption and Emission of Luteolin Molecule. And where we analyzed the geometrical structure of the luteolin molecule, and we calculate the characteristic wavelength of emission and absorption, and we compare this with the experimental results. Next, please. Well, first of all, I will talk about flavonoids. And these flavonoids is a group of natural substances where we can find in many fruits and many beverages as well, vegetables. And the thing of these flavonoids is that they offer a lot of benefits to our body. But our organism is not able to synthesize these things that these flavonoids offer. That's why we have to find a way to consume them. Okay, and they offer us antioxidant, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and anti-carcinogenic characteristics, and that's why we study them. Okay. Well, it is very important to us to have clear what is the structure of these flavonoids. First of all, I will talk about this basic flavonoid backbone that is made of three rings. The first one is a benzene ring denoted by the letter A. The second one is a pityl ring denoted by the letter C. And the third one is a phenyl ring denoted by the letter B. These are just illustrations to help to explain what is the basic flavonoid backbone made. And something about this flavonoids is if we change elements, if we add some elements to this basic structure, we can get a lot of subgroups or subclasses or families of these flavonoids. And one that is very important for us is this one flavones, that if we notice there is a double bond between the carbon 2 and the carbon 3 here, and a carbonyl group in the 4th position. Okay, that is what defines these subgroup flavones. Okay, and this is just like the rest of the drawings, just like for illustration. This one will be useful in the next slide. Okay, now we have the geometrical structure of lutein, where if we remember the structure of the flavones, we only need to add 4 hydroxyl groups in position number 5, 7, 3 prime, and 4 prime. Okay, that's why we can call lutein this 3 prime, 4 prime, 5, 7 tetrahydroxyflavone as well. Okay. In this slide, we can see 2 images of the first one here at the left is the NO5 configuration of the lutein molecule. And on the right, we can see the keto O5 configuration of this lutein molecule. The difference, if we notice on the right of both images, is this bond that is denoted by dots, okay? And between O4 and H5 for NO5 configuration, and between H5 and O5 for keto O5 configuration. And well, at the moment of the optimization of this O5 configuration of the lutein molecule, we have proton transfer in this bond, okay, and that turns this configuration to the keto O5 configuration, okay, and this is a very important process for work, and it is called excited state intermolecular and proton transfer. Okay, to calculate these characteristic wavelengths and some optical properties of this lutein molecule, we use the density functional theory and the time-dependent density functional theory with this Minnesota functional MO6-2x using this base set 6-31 double plus G double asterisk. Okay, here I will show you some results that we got in our calculations. You can see here in the table the main characteristics obtained for the optimized geometry of O5 configuration of our Newtonian molecule in the ground state and the first excited state, as well in vacuum and methanol. Okay. Using the Minnesota functional and the basis set I mentioned before. And what we can observe here is that between the vacuum and methanol structure in the ground state, there is a difference of 2 degrees in the torsion angle. Okay, there's not too much difference, but comparing with the structure in methanol, the first excited state, there is a big difference or a significant difference for us because here the structure is practically planar. Okay. And another thing to say about is this characteristic wavelength of absorption in the ground state in methanol. It is 303, and the first excited state it is 380. Almost a difference of 77 numbers. Okay. In this table, I will show you the results of main characteristics for the optimized geometry of the configuration of the Newtonian molecule in the first excited state, also in vacuum and in methanol. And what we can see here is that our molecule remains planar, and there is a significant difference between the characteristic wavelength of emission. There is difference of more than 100 numbers. Okay. And well, the conclusions are separated in 2 parts, the ground state and the excited state. For the ground state, we have that in the configuration of Newtonian molecule, there is an energy minimum in vacuum and in methanol as well. And for the characteristic absorption wavelength obtained for the configuration, these are about 290 nanometers in vacuum and 300 nanometers in methanol. And for the excited state, vacuum only configuration is stable, and it characteristic wavelength of emissions near of 620 nanometers. And in methanol, both configurations, anode and keto, are stable for this Newtonian molecule, and we can observe 2 peaks at 380 nanometers and 490 nanometers, respectively. Okay. And well, that will be it for me. Thank you very much.
One question from the audience.
Thanks for the nice talk. How did you incorporate the methanol in your calculation?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, how did you incorporate the methanol in your calculation?
Yeah, methanol is one of our solvents. We have usually its found form. We use methanol as our solvent, and we use a laser of different wavelength. We detect this spectrum of Newtonian. That's how we use methanol to use it as a solvent for
in the experiment.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question? Do you have experimental evidence about, for example, you know if there is a spectrum of absorption in the literature?
Yes, actually, in the lab from Valsequillo here in Puebla, we made all of these calculations, experiments. So there's
Because you can compare these results with your computational study. Okay. Any other question? No? Let's thank. Okay, the next presentation is from Eduardo Lugo. It's a cognitive assessment and trading performance correlations.
Hello everyone, as you know me, I'm Eduardo Lugo. I'm going to present you a quick study that we did at the University of Montreal, that we assess cognitively traders from Neuro Street Academy associated with Wall Street in New York. So this is a summary of the talk. First, I'm going to talk about the training perceptual cognitive skills with NeuroTracker and TEHI. Then I'm going to show you some scientific evidence supporting NT. Then I'm going to show you perceptual cognitive motor charge measurements with NT. And then I'll give you some new perspective using NT. And finally, I'll give you some conclusions. So the brain is plastic. Whenever it's damaged or you want to learn a new task, it's amazing property that it has. It's trainable, and recently there's a lot of development on any cognitive softwares that can help to increase human performance. At UDM, we developed one of these tools called NeuroTracker. It's based in something called 3D MOT, where we ask the subjects to fix here at the center of the screen, where you have 8 bolts. Then we tag 4 of them. We ask the subjects to track them, and then the bolts start moving for some time. At the end of the movement, which is random movement, we ask the persons to locate the 4 initial bolts. If they're capable to do it, then the next round is the bolts are going to increase the speed. And if they're not capable to do it, then the the speed is going to decrease. With that, please, next. With that, no, next. Okay, with that tool, we are capable to assess the performance of different humans. For instance, here, I'm showing you soccer players, elite players versus novices. You see here, the red one graph here represent the elite. And with NeuroTracker, you easily could separate and see who belongs to the novice part, which is not an expert, versus an elite player. And also you can, if you put these two together, you can kind of assess the learning rate of the exercise. In both graph, left and right, you will see the elites are better than the novices. And this is very important because countries like UK, US start using even right now more and more these kind of exercises to start scouting for children that has these abilities, right? That belongs to the elite. We don't know yet why these things happen because it's very hard to study in the brain. But this is a first assessment to start looking for future elite players. Next one, please. So here are a summary of some studies on NeuroTracker. We have studied basketball players in NBA. This is the Florida, I forgot the name. Then we have also surgeons, and in all of these studies, we use NeuroTracker to assess and to enhance the ability of either a surgeon or a basketball player, or in military, or even in university soccer players, to see if we can transfer from this exercise, when they learn the exercise, we look into at some other metrics just to see if there is transfer, and there is transfer. Please, the next one. But also, NeuroTracker serves us not only to train and enhance performance, but also to assess the cognitive or physiological charge in humans. For instance, in this case, these pilots are using NeuroTracker while doing 3 different levels of maneuvers in their air, which is very difficult because they have to pilot, right? But at the same time, they need to track the balls. And here you see for low, medium, high maneuver level of difficulty, NeuroTracker can tell you, these are the scores of NeuroTracker. It can tell you when there is charge. Here is a jet, and this is a simulator. So when you are flying, really flying, you see there's the difference between these two in the 3 cases. It's measured by NeuroTracker. So it's a very, very powerful tool. Next one, please. So for that reason, we decided to study how traders can not only perform, but to see if we can correlate the gains that they make or losses, and see if we can correlate with the NeuroTracker scores, right? So we used this NeuroStreet Trading Academy, 29 traders, old men, and we use a NeuroTracker cloud version of the tool, but developed by this company in Montreal. And all traders use these platforms, right? But a few of them, they use live accounts to trading. This is very important. The study was conducted fully remotely. So all the research before this, it's done under controlled situations. This is the first study we have done where all the traders are fully free. There are basic instructions, but they do it at home without supervision. Okay, next one, please. So this is the metrics we want to correlate. We have the NeuroTracker speed thresholds. And we have these two very important trading metrics, which is the total net profit defined by these, and the max drawdown defined by these. But basically, this one means losses, you're losing money, and this one means you're gaining money. Okay, next one, please. So we use 29 dealers. They trade in 624 times. These are the distribution of the results for all the metrics. Because the distributions are not normal, we use Spearman's correlations instead of something else. Next one, please. This is a very important result. Even though it's in the wild, but as the psychologists like to say, there's no supervision. The curves that I showed you before under control conditions are quite similar. So even though like you don't supervise them, the results are the same. Next one, please. And here are the correlations. NeuroTracker score correlate positively or negatively with the total net profit the same way. In other words, if this increases the scores of NeuroTracker, the profit increases, and if the NT scores decreases, the total net profit decreases. And the opposite is for max drawdown. When the NeuroTracker scores increases, max drawdown decreases, and when the scores decreases, then this increases. Which means NeuroTracker can tell you at some point that if your trader is not cognitively good that day, you can say you don't go to the floor, you don't trade today. And that's the final objective of the project. Next one, please. So finally, just to give you the conclusions, and then we found these correlations between NeuroTracker scores and two very important metrics for trading assessment. In the future, we would like to use these correlations, as I said, to help managers, traders, investors, brokers, to avoid lower cognitive performance that might brought by a number of reasons, including fatigue or performance anxiety, and help them make better investment decisions for you. Okay. Thank you very much.
There are any questions online? Question from the audience. How do you measure the speed?
Well, so everything is programmed inside the software.
Everything is programmed inside the software.
So it's a virtual environment. It's a 3D environment. I didn't mention because I don't have one. You have to use 3D glasses, and everything's programmed there to have a certain range of speeds. And what we did in the lab was measuring physically at the beginning, a few years ago, is correlate with in a virtual chamber. It's correlate these virtual speeds with real exercise with balls, all that. And then from once we calibrate it that way, well, we know what. And since then, we use that calibration.
But do you use a kind of sensors in some place?
No. Once we calibrate that, the virtual world, we know what the speed is of the ball. We don't use any sensor after that.
Okay, understand.
Okay.
Any other question? Have you compared the different performance between, for example, basketball players, football players, soccer players?
Yes, actually, we have some studies with Olympic teams in Canada, in Spain, and different fields. And all the time there is this curve, the learning curve, and also there is transfer to some other activity like soccer players. It's a nice study done by Dr. Omar, where the impact of Montreal from the MLS, they use NeuroTracker, then cascadeta, right? And we film all that, and there were coaches just counting the number of precision for passes. And it turns out that after the use of NeuroTracker, they increase the precision of passing. When we started with actually with Manchester United, and actually it was when the Chicharito was really good, and they went to the final and lost against Barcelona. But that Manchester United was using at that time NeuroTracker. Tom Brady has used the NeuroTracker. Matt Ryan from the Atlanta Falcons has used the NeuroTracker. It's all over the world now, and now we are going to Wall Street.
Very good, very interesting. Any other question? Okay, let's thank to Eduardo. Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, the next presentation.
Entonces seguiría.
Okay, then the next presentation is from Andrea Ruiz Villan. Efficiency of molecular mechanics as a tool to understand the structural diversity of Watson Crick duplexes.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Andrea, and the title of this work is Efficiency of Molecular Mechanics as a Tool to Understand the Structural Diversity of Watson Crick duplex. So as we know, DNA is the biomolecule that carries the hereditary material, and it is a double helix that has an antiparallel structure. This antiparallel structure, together with the complementary base pair, for example, adenine complement with thymine and guanine complement with cytosine, is the so-called Watson-Crick duplex. So, in many cases, DNA interacts with other complexes such as proteins and have the capability to having different spatial configurations. So these spatial configurations were analyzed by the Czech group in the last decade, and they classified many experimental fragments in different conformational classes of the DNA, so different conformations, spatial conformation of the DNA, and they classified 96 conformational classes or dinucleotide, or dinucleotide conformers. Why a dinucleotide? Because in a dinucleotide lies the 9 parameters that describes each conformational classes of the DNA. And these 9 parameters consist of the torsion angles, 7 torsion angles of the sugar phosphate backbone, and 2 glycosidic torsion angles, He1 and He2. So it is important to understand the contribution of this dinucleotide step in the conformational classes of DNA. So, theoretical computation methods enable us the study of contribution to the DNA conformation of its subunits via molecular mechanics and quantum mechanics approach. So, in our group, 4 conformers were studied with both approaches. The conformers of the conformational class were B1, B2, A1, and A2. So with the result was shown that the deoxydenucleotide monophosphate, this fragment over here, is the minimal fragment that provides structural information of the Watson-Crick duplex. Additionally, the three-dimensional structure of the DNA depends on the directionality of the sugar phosphate backbone, this fragment over here, the preferable torsion angles of the sugar phosphate backbone, and also the sequence dependence regularity in adjacent bases. So in these years, we extend the study with more conformational classes with QM methods, and now the aim of this work is to evaluate the ability of molecular mechanics methods to reproduce experimental data and results of quantum mechanics studies with two amber force field, BSC1 and OL15. So in this molecular mechanic approach, the atomic contribution are modeled with this potential energy function. This expression together with parameters are known as a force field, and okay, which fragments are studied. So we studied three simple fragments of DNA: the deoxydenucleic monophosphate, this fragment over here, the complementary deoxydenucleic monophosphate, this over here, or a duplex fragment, and at least the sugar phosphate backbone. The experimental fragments were extracted from the nucleic acid database. Each group of phosphate was neutralized with sodium. And as we know, the experimental structure DNA have many denucleotide steps. So we replace these neighbors of denucleated steps by hydrogen atoms, as we can see in these yellow circles. And in the case of sugar phosphate backbone, also the bases were replaced by hydrogen atoms. So with this, we studied these fragments with the force field BSC1 and OL15. So the first analysis carried out was the conformational classes of DNA with similar characteristics. So these similar characteristics are found in the values of torsional angle. And as we can see here in blue, is the characteristic values of each conformational class. BZ00 and BB01 have similar values in the torsion angles, and BB12 and BB13 also have similar values in their torsional angles. However, in the angle alpha, they have different values in this torsion. So we start with sugar phosphate backbone, experimental sugar phosphate backbone in each conformational class, BB00, BB01, BB12, BB13. And then we do geometry optimization with both force field, BSC1 and OL15. And as a result, we obtain conformation BB01 as that have a similar energy minimum structure as BB00, and the BB13 conformation, the sugar phosphate backbone, have a similar energy minimum structure as BB12. So the next step was to extend our study to fragment like duplex fragments or single chain, considering at least one strand in a BB00 fragment. We optimize these fragments with the force field BSC1, and as we can see here in the table, the torsion angles correspond to a conformational class BB00. However, there are distortions because when we have one is located in position 5 prime, so on the top, hydrogen bonds are formed. So this behavior also still remains in the analysis or in the study of the conformational BA09. Also, the fragments were optimized with BSC1 force field, and again, when we have a one in a position of 5 prime, we have a distortion. So, as a conclusion of this work, the results confirm the utility of the molecular mechanics method using BSC1 and OL15 Anger force field, which produce structural characteristics of separate sugar phosphate fragments resemble those obtained with quantum methods. And the above conclusion was extended to optimize duplex, torsion angles of single chain and duplex, keep the features revealed in the geometry optimization of sugar phosphate backbone, the optimization of single chain where one is in the position 5 prime, results in artificial hydrogen bond formation. And finally, in some cases, deviation of molecular mechanics, deviation of NM optimized structures from experimental and QM optimized are related to the deficiency of force field use. So thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thanks for the nice presentation. You concluded that you find deviations sometimes between the force field and the experimental data. And you also said that these deviations are also with respect to the optimized structures from QM calculation. Does this mean that the QM calculation and the experimental data are always giving you qualitative the same structures?
So in QM methods, unfortunately, there are not too much calculations, so we can't make a explicit conclusion. It's a partial conclusion. But yes, this is a consequence of the force field itself. However, we need to study more and more sequences, because in this work, it is important to have or to study the 16 possible sequences that duplex DNA have. So we are finishing that study, but yes, in most of the case with molecular mechanics, we have this deviation when one is in position 5 prime. I don't know if I answered the question.
Any other question?
you, Andrea. And my question is, I'm not very familiarized with the calculations about conformers in DNA, but what is the reason to add sodium ions in the conformers? It's just to neutralize the charge, but what's the reason to use a sodium? Yes, the reason is to neutralize the system because we want in the phosphate group, we have charges that are negative, so we need to neutralize all the system. So that's why when we have sugar phosphate backbone, duplexes and single chain, we neutralized. Even in quantum methods, my work is not about quantum methods. A colleague made all these calculations, but yes, also in quantum methods, we need to neutralize the system, and of course, in molecular mechanics.
Any other question? Okay, let's thank Andrea for his works. Okay, the next presentation is from Cesar Morgado. It's a conformational changes of Drew Dickerson dodecamer in the presence of caffeine. Please.
Hi, my name is Cesar Morgado. Good afternoon. I'm not really good talking in English. I'm going to do my best. So if I commit some errors, I'm sorry. Well, the work I'm going to present is the conformational change of Drew Dickerson dodecamer in the presence of caffeine. Why we do this? Because I think everyone here takes caffeine every day. I like coffee, I like Coca-Cola, I like tea. Everyone in the world takes a lot of caffeine every day. So there are, next one, please. This is the introduction. I'm going to talk about a little bit of caffeine. What for us is important? Well, as I'm saying, caffeine is really common in nature, and it has a structure so it can interact with DNA. There are a lot of studies done for a lot of other people, experimental studies, where some rats with any kind of cancer are administrated a lot of doses of caffeine, and then there are treated with chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and we have observed that there are really difference between the group without caffeine and the group with caffeine. So they conclude that how to say, the caffeine have to a relation with the DNA, because the DNA, are saying other people, is the one who controls the cell division. So there are experimental evidence that caffeine interacts with DNA. So we wanted to know how the caffeine interacts with DNA. So we started a little experiment simulation where we have DNA change. In this case, we selected the Drew Dickerson dodecamer because it has a lot of history, it has been studied a lot, it has been studied its geometry and its hydration characteristic. So we thought that the Drew Dickerson dodecamer is a good sequence to start the study. So we make a molecular docking and then a molecular dynamic simulation. But the next one. Well, for this simulation, we need an initial structure. And I can just draw the molecule. I need to pick it from somewhere. And the dodecamer were selected from the nucleic data bank with ID of 4C64. And the structure of caffeine was obtained from zinc 15. So Then we realized that molecular docking, I'm not going to talk a lot about molecular docking. I don't want to say that a molecular docking is where you have a macromolecule, a big molecule, and a small molecule called ligand. And then you ask the program to calculate where is the best place to collect the ligand. Well, for this, we use it Autodoc 4.2, and we use it this box and spacing of 2.1. There is enough to get really confidence in results. Some more, I want to talk about the result later. The next one. And then with the structure we obtained from molecular docking, we made molecular dynamics. It's a very specific molecular dynamics where we use water as solvent with the model T3 We use it at temperature of 5K, pressure of 1 atmosphere, and a simulation time of 5 nanoseconds. Well, we use assemble with this configuration, assemble NPT. The next one. This is the result. Well, for the molecular docking, we found two really important places where the caffeine interacts with the DNA. The first one were in the 9 and 10 position with the nucleotide guanine and cytosine, and this was replicated because the dodecamer had a really interesting characteristic. It is symmetric. The sequence from up to down in the principal chain is the same one of the down to up in the complementary chain. So we expected that the place we found being more with less binding energy will be replicated in the symmetry, and we obtained the same. In one, we obtained 6.40 kilocalories per mole, and in the other, we obtained minus 6.34 kilocalories per mole. It's almost the same. We, in this place, I know you will say, but what is the control? I saw this. Well, whereas we didn't have a control, we just assumed that because there are experimental evidence of this interaction, it's good enough to try to find where the caffeine interacts with the sequence. Really, this is a really a small part of my master degree. So maybe this could be expanded with other sequence, with other kind of temperature, maybe another conditions. But in this case is what I bring in. The next one. Well, then when we had the structure of the molecular docking, we used a molecular dynamics. Why molecular dynamics? Why not use KM? Because everyone loves quantum mechanics. But as you can see, dodecamer had a lot of atoms, and we used explicit water. In this case, I had like 4,000 atoms, and that is the reason I use quantum. Well, what is? I use, as I said, I use it 5 nanoseconds simulation, and I use it this time because in this time the structure, the system, find the equilibrium, geometrical equilibrium and energetic equilibrium. So was enough time. Maybe another people can say, why not to do a 100 nanosecond simulation? Well, in this case, the computer I was working wasn't really good. I got the simulation at 5. But the equilibrium was really good enough to realize the geometrical analytic I'm going to show you later. Well, it was found that the RMSD of the caffeine DNA complex, so I removed all the water, showed a deviation between 0.8 and 1.4 Armstrong, and it's good enough to represent the equilibrium, especially with all the hydrogen atoms that are in both molecules. So they are really flexible, and the RMCD could change a little bit. The next one. Well, another Andrea in the last exposition talked about the angles, torsion angles, so I didn't talk about them. You'll remember that in the sugar phosphide backbone, there are some torsion angles called alpha, beta, gamma, delta, eta, zeta. Well, these are important for me because I was studying the geometrical structure. Really, I wasn't really interested in how the nucleotides are interesting, just how the backbone and the structure are changing over the time. We in this take this structure I'm presenting in this table is the dodecamer without caffeine, just the dodecamer in some water, 5 nanoseconds of simulation, and I found that this table is really similar to the dodecamer in the crystallization form, in the crystallized form. So I could accept that I can compare this table with the crystallized one, and it is really close. I'm here pointing this 9C cytosine because in the molecular docking we found that the caffeine really likes to accumulate in the 9 and 10 nucleotides, but just the 9 nucleotide has a change in her angel. So if you want to read my work, you check these values and we compare it with the next one. Can you check, please? Okay. Well, I can change. If I change one by one, there are really not really big changes. So the changes are here in the 9 cytosine. We made the study, we statistical measuring the mean and the, how do you say, standard deviation. We use it in the standard deviation to analyze if there are really statistical change or are you randomly. But now we found that, for instance, in the angle alpha, there are an increase 11.5, and the deviation is 5.6. So the deviation, the change is 2 times the standard deviation, and we can see increasing the beta in 26, almost 2.5 standard deviation. And I can one by one see that there is really a change in the 9 cytosine. So we can conclude, the conclusions. I forgot to, in this, in other words, there was a group of persons who used Monte Carlo to find if the caffeine and the DNA could interact, but they used a really long chain, but didn't calculate how the geometrical changes. Just they say, yeah, caffeine and DNA interact. No more. Well, what we found, the simulation of Bill Dickerson to the camera and caffeine can show that the DNA and caffeine interact in a lot of sites and a lot of positions. I found here the 2 with the best energy binding energy. So, but there are a lot more. But those interactions, when I put the simulation and add the caffeine in the place molecular docking state, in more than 1 nanosecond, the caffeine in weight was swimming over the place of work. So this binding wasn't really good enough to study. What more? But in the 9 nucleotide, the solvent couldn't remove the caffeine from the interaction site. Evidence with this, evidence has been found of the caffeine deform the structure because it changed the torsion angles. The other torsion angles almost remain the same, but in the 9 cytosine, it really changes up to 3 times the average standard deviation. Well, we found, because these people really found that the best sequence of where the caffeine interact with the DNA was guanosine and cytosine, and another two. Because our sequence was really small, we just combine the guanosine cytosine binding site. It's all. Sorry for this.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Gracias para esto splendid presentation. You're welcome. Mira, mí me gusta cafeína, pero no con 5 Kelvin. Es un poco frío. ¿Por qué usan 5 Kelvin por la dinámica molecular y no 300?
Well,
Oh, no, you answer in English. That is unfair. No, you want to answer in English?
Yeah, I try. Why not? I want to learn. I suck in English. I know, but well, we should find Kelvins because in that moment my essay was really bad, and I tried to make a 300 degrees. No, it took like 4 weeks. I mean, really only calculate 1 nanosecond. I was in my master degree, the time was coming, and well, what can I say? 5 degrees. And I verified that because in another position, the caffeine, oh, nice, I like it to go swimming over there. And in this place, well, in those two places, it stayed the same. It stayed binding with DNA. So I say, well, I know it's not the best position, it's not the best time, but if I can spare it, I will be doing a lot of things. More money. We all need more money.
Is that any other question? Have you tried to work with the National Supercomputing Laboratory here?
I tried, but they don't have this version of Android. And they had another version of the program, but they can, well, I couldn't change the temperature, and we used an Andy, but we couldn't make it work this. We tried to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the last talk is from Harini Priya. Are you online?
The next presentation is from Harini Priya Seshadri. Is zinc oxide nanoparticles drug delivery system. Please.
Okay, we can see you, and give me a second. So now everybody can hear you. Yeah, whenever you are ready.
Yeah, should I play the video or I present by PPT?
As you wish.
Okay. I try to play the video, and we'll see if it doesn't work. I'll go back to the presentation.
Okay, many thanks.
Yeah. Good evening, all. I'm Dr. Harini.
Okay.
Priya presenting on behalf of RCPL NTT1 R&D India on the topic zinc oxide nanoparticle stack drug delivery system. The objectives of the work are to study zinc oxide tagged drugs such as ecosprin, a blood thinner with aspirin, clopidogrel, and atorvastatin combination, and titanium oxide pigmentation. Citicoline, a neurotransmitter, in their pharmaceutical formulations to understand the reduction in dosage, targeted drug delivery, and effect on blood and neural system of the subject. The zinc oxide nanoparticles are synthesized by wet chemical method with zinc sulfate dissolved in water, reacted to sodium carbonate at 70 degrees C to form zinc carbonate. The zinc carbonate is sintered at 400 degrees C muffle furnace to form agglomerated nanoparticles of zinc oxide. The agglomerated zinc oxide nanoparticles were then ultrasonicated in acetone, dried at room temperature to obtain 95% purity of non-agglomerated zinc oxide nanoparticles. The pharmaceutical formulations of EcoSprit and CityMed were ground into powder and mixed with non-agglomerated zinc oxide nanoparticles in the weight ratio of 4:1 with acetone as the solvent. The TAG drug delivery system is then dried at room temperature and subjected to further characterization. The structural analysis via XRD of the zinc oxide nanoparticles TAG, CityMed and EcoSprit combination revealed peaks of citicoline observed at 2 theta of 19.9 to 23.3, titanium oxide peaks at 24.86 to 55.94, 7 to 9.8 and 23 as clopidogrel peaks, 15 to 15.9 as that of aspirin, 20.9 to 22.8 as that of aspirin, 23.47 peak for combined aspirin and clopidogrel, 28.9651 as that of titanium oxide peak, 32.98 as that of clopidogrel peak, confirming the presence of all the constituents in the CityMed and EcoSprit pharmaceutical formulations. The optical analysis of zinc oxide TAG pharmaceutical formulations of CityMed and EcoSprit reveal via FTIR analysis broad peaks with multiplex from 3000 to 422 centimeter inverse, indicating functional groups such as alcoholic groups, carboxylic groups, chlorophenyl stretching, CSC stretching, C double bond O stretching, chlorophenyl ring stretching, pyridine methylene bagging, CO stretching, methylene twist, chlorophenyl Cl stretching and bending, pyridine ring stretching, pyridine methylene rocking, chlorophenyl spatial bending, so on and so forth. Whereas that of citicoline includes three major functional groups such as benzene ring, which is aromatic in nature, carboxylic group, ester group, and a broad peak between 3100 to 3300 centimeter inverse proved the presence of carboxylic group, which can be attributed to the presence of acids, esters, methyl group, benzene ring, and phosphoric acid functional groups, thus indicating the citicoline pharmaceutical formulation consisted of citidine diphosphate and choline moieties. The electronic spectra of zinc oxide TAG pharmaceutical formulations of CityMed and EcoSprit indicated peak at 283 nanometer due to diphosphocholine moiety, broad peak from 240 to 290 nanometer attributed to aspirin at 265 nanometer, clopidogrel at 254 nanometer, atorvastatin with the maxima at 237 and minima at 261 nanometer. Peak at 396 nanometer is attributed to titanium oxide as the pigment. Thus, from FTIR, XRD, and UV visible analysis, it can be understood that zinc oxide tagged drug system of CityMed and EcoSprit pharmaceutical formulations does not carry any impurity when tagged in the presence of acetone as the solvent. The electrochemical analysis of zinc oxide tagged pharmaceutical formulations of CityMed and EcoSprit had been carried out in a 3-electrode assembly with platinum coated with zinc oxide tagged drug as the working electrode, platinum wire as the counter electrode, and saturated calomel electrode as the reference electrode in 1 molar KCl as the electrolyte solution. The oxidation peak of aspirin can be seen at 0.65 volt versus saturated calomel electrode, whereas two small humps at 0.8 and 1.05 volt in the forward scan is attributed to the oxidation of atorvastatin and clopidogrel respectively. Whereas in the case of citicoline, an oxidation peak had been observed at 0.43 volts, indicating the presence of the base of citidine, phosphoric acid, and choline. The presence of choline is manifested at 0.43 volt in the cyclic voltammogram of CityMed, tagged with zinc oxide on platinum electrode versus saturated calomel electrode. Since the zinc oxide tagged drug system is highly soluble in water and other polar solvents, it can be seen that from the Randall-Sevig's equation, the diffusion coefficient of combined drug tagged with zinc oxide possesses higher diffusion coefficient when compared to that of the independent drugs like CityMed tagged with zinc oxide or EcoSprit tagged with zinc oxide. This led to a possible mechanism of hydrolysis of these drugs in the body, where aspirin hydrolyzes to salicylic acid and acetic acid, clopidogrel hydrolyzes to acetaldehyde and pyridine 5-ol, whereas citicoline hydrolyzed to citidine, phosphoric acid, and choline. Whereas that of atorvastatin, there is a reduction followed by hydrolysis, resulting in the formation of phenylamidic acid and heptanoic acid. And these substituents reveal that there is a free release of neurotransmitters to the bloodstream, as well as that of salicylic acid and other acids such as acetic acid and phosphoric acid, which further reduces the pH of the medium to the physiological pH of 5.5, thereby assisting the system to further absorb the neurotransmitter and the blood thinner by the human subject. The effect of zinc oxide tag drugs like Citimet and Ecosprin on the blood of a human system had been tested in vitro, where the complete blood count, leukocytes, differential count, and neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, basophils, platelets, prothrombin time, and viscosity had been determined in the presence and absence of drugs. The baseline parameters were taken from a healthy plate, and the control is from the biological reference values, and it can be seen from the table that the drug works well at lower as well as in the higher concentration of 15 microgram per ml to 250 microgram per ml. And it is also observed that when the concentration of the zinc oxide tag drug increases in the range of 125 to 250 microgram per ml, the hemoglobin count and that of leukocytes reduces, thereby indicating the fact that there may be anemic nature associated with the tagged drug. And also, it is seen that the platelet count increases with the drug system, and hence the immune response is increased, and zinc supplement is also given to the system. The prothrombin time seems to be well within the biological reference interval, thereby indicating that the blood is neither becoming too thin nor going into hemolysis. Whereas the viscosity of blood is an average of 4 millipascals per second, indicating that it is well within the biological interval, and hence the blood is neither clotting too fast nor it is flowing thin like water, thereby indicating the fact that targeted zinc oxide tagged drug delivery of Citimet and Ecosprin can reduce the dosage of the drugs from milligrams to microgram, which is 1,000 times decrease in the drug, and it can be directly introduced into the bloodstream where the clot has observed, or into the brain blood vessels where the stroke had been observed in the stroke affected patients. The summary of the studies on zinc oxide tag, citicoline, and ecosprin type of drug is that it possesses no cytotoxicity, it has very good cell viability, the immune response is very, very good, and it is a good zinc supplement. Zinc oxide tagged citicoline and ecosprin, when administered at a very low quantity from nanogram to microgram per ml, it can target the blood clot and the stroke affected region in a patient. And this type of low quantity of drug is 10 power 3 to 10 power 6 times lower than that of what is currently administered orally to the patients. This type of drug delivery system may also help specially able children and adults to improve their brain function, motor skills, and cognition when taken and targeted drug delivery fashion at a very low quantity without getting overdosed. To demonstrate this kind of drug delivery system in practicality, preclinical trials need to be conducted to determine the compatibility and functionality via in vitro MTT tunnel assays in human brain cell line, in vivo testing in rat and rabbits, and clinical trials in human subjects after appropriate approval from the government regulatory bodies. With this, I conclude my talk, and I thank you all for giving me an opportunity to present our work here. Thank you so much. Hello.
Questions? Question?
I have one question. Where did you obtain the blood, the human blood for your test? Because there are some international regulations.
Absolutely. It is from the volunteers. We have taken the blood, and we have taken a consent also from them. And in India, if you have a consent from the individual, we can do the in vitro analysis, and in vivo only involves a lot of regulation.
Okay, many thanks. And another question. Why did you trade with the pharmacological formulation and not only the molecules.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely a right question. Actually, there is no point in reinventing the wheel. We are trying to develop a drug delivery system where a biocompatible zinc oxide as a carrier. And we wanted to see what is the lesser dosage the in vitro analysis can take in the bloodline cells, because we are seeing in reality around 500 milligrams of Citimet and 75 milligrams of ecosprin had been given to people who are affected by stroke as a preventive measure to stop blood clotting in their blood vessels or in the stroke affected region. So in order to reduce this dosage is our objective. Our objective is not to study the raw organic molecules that has the effect of neurotransmitters and blood thinning. I hope I have answered.
Okay, many thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions?
For the last presentations, we are just going to watch the videos. Is work 23 from Anirban Pandyopadhyay, I don't know how is the pronunciation, and how does microtubular network assist in determining the location of dotted nucleus, electromagnetic resonance as key to 3D geometric engineering. And the other one is amyloid can form fractal antenna-like networks responsive to electromagnetic beating and wireless signaling.
Okay. You can put the video, Dr. Claudia. Okay, we can't hear the presenter. Okay, there is the sound. Okay.
So I'm presenting the paper of Komal Saxena, and the title of the paper is Amyloid Beta Can Form Fractal Antenna-like Networks Responsive to Electromagnetic Beating and Wireless Signaling. So this work was done in collaboration with the Swiss group, Ronald Rake, and the beta plate and the materials were created by Mariel Olukiwalti and Puspendra Pathik Shubrata, and K.S. Daya is the PhD supervisor of Komal Saxena who worked. So this is an electromagnetic resonance measurement on amyloid beta plaque, and we added clathrin, because clathrin, in the brain, clathrin plays a very important part. So clathrin has two different kind of chains, clathrin, a small and long chain. So together, when there is a deposit in the brain or any neural junction, they come and then they clean it up. So they come together and then they create a network and create a sphere-like structures. And that sphere-like structures is then taken outside, out of the body. So this is a very important mechanism. And if this mechanism is not successful, then the neuron deposit, if neuron cell blasts and the deposit forms, beta plaque, and then the microtubules come out and then entangle, from tangle, and those deposits needs to be removed. So we wanted to see that if we naturally add this this small chain and long chain long chain molecules, can they remove this deposit, the specs, can they remove? And if we apply electromagnetic bursts, electromagnetic signal of different kind of frequencies, can we enhance this ability? So basically what we wanted to do is, if somebody has an Alzheimer's, can we use electromagnetic pulse microwave as a trigger point of a very particular frequency? We know that from the skull, outside the skull, applying such electromagnetic field is very difficult. And then beyond a certain stage for the Alzheimer patients, what happens is the beta plaques move from one place to another. And then what do is, after moving to that place, they possibly they create something, and that causes the blast of another set of neurons. So what happens is whole brain starts shrinking because the neurons die and die and die. So one thing that we have done in these papers is a bit of fibrils. We found that on a particular surface, the hexagonal close packing, because of the hexagonal close packing, there is a formation of antenna-like fractal architecture. So fractal antenna-like system. So fractal antenna is used in a mobile phone. Why? Because where the antenna small architectures are there, it is good for high frequency sensitivity, and then large antenna structures are for low frequency. So a wide ranges of frequencies could be absorbed and will be used for communication, using it as an antenna. So if similar structures formed by a beta fibrils, then it means that when this small deposits, they move around the brain and triggers Alzheimer's in different parts of the brain. So that could be one reason, antenna-like structure. But what we wanted to understand is, if we apply clathrin light chain and clathrin heavy chain, CLC and CHC, and if we do Fabry-Perot interferometry and other kind of quantum optics, then can we pump electromagnetic wave and then simultaneously apply polarized laser to observe the changes? You can understand that it is very important that we use two different modes of characterization to get a credible result. Why? Because suppose you are pumping electromagnetic signal, and then you are seeing the electromagnetic signal output as a response. There could be many different kind of hysteresis effect that will be included in the output result. But suppose you are exciting it with microwave, gigahertz, and then near around petahertz, that is a laser, polarized laser beam, and you observe what is happening over there. Then because of the huge difference in the frequencies, hysteresis effect may not affect the light. So only the material property will be incorporated. So that is considered a good way to do the characterization. So often in our group, we provide this kind of studies. So let us look at the figures for a moment. And these are the methods. And we move to, what happens is, as I said, that a spectrum analyzer and a function generator. So we see 10 to the power 3 orders different frequency range we observe. So even if so we may apply, say, gigahertz and observe it in megahertz or kilohertz. What are the responses coming up? But not in the gigahertz essentially directly, and to see the effect. So you can see the antenna effect here. So we apply light chain and heavy chain and try to see the morphogenesis, how it is changing. And that morphogenesis, we directly read live using photodiode to see the interference pattern of the different part of the different part. And these are the morphological changes that you are seeing here. And we apply long chain, short chain and long chain, and then together and try to see how the structures are changing as a function of time. And then we measure. This is a theoretical simulation. We try to understand and understand, because you can see it's a very protecting shield. Another important thing in our measurement, in all our measurement, is that we put a cavity, and in the cavity, the source and the drain is very nearby, and that cavity is put inside another cavity, bigger cavity. So the cable goes there, antenna, and the source and the drain. Source and the drain, we create a structure almost like the theoretical simulation, so that by solving Maxwell's equations, we can create a theoretical electrical distribution. And as you can see here, we artificially created the antenna and try to understand how the electromagnetic field is actually generating, and that can have a tremendous beating. You can see the beating frequencies, periodic oscillations that is generated in megahertz and kilohertz. So the beating effect is a beautiful way of communicating in a large area network. So that's why Alzheimer's disease becomes a devastatingly very powerful. And this is the setup where we have the February interferometer. So the February interferometer, what happens is back and forth the light goes to the sample, and it amplifies 10 to the 5, 10 to the 6 times. So even if there is in the antenna, tiny little antenna, narrow antenna, there is a beating frequency happening at a very low energy. We can amplify it and we can observe it. So that's in that respect. February interferometer is one of the finest way to understand the biological resonance, because most of the cases you will see, most of the groups, when they publish papers on biological resonance, on electromagnetic resonance of biomaterials, they pump electromagnetic signal in the near about similar frequency or harmonic frequency. They observe what is out. Mostly that is merely a hysteresis. But if really biological systems have their own internal signal processing, if you want to see it, you have to go to very low frequency. That means very low power signal that is coming up. Because when you pump, say, 1 gigahertz to a particular biomaterial, at 1 gigahertz, if you observe, high energy will come up. But that energy coming from the source, the material, or the material, you don't know. But if you find some signal is coming at the megahertz or kilohertz, 10 to the 3 orders, 10 to the 6 orders lower or higher frequency range, then what happens is definitely coming from a material. But that signal will be very, very low. So we need to amplify several orders of magnitude. So if we want to go kilohertz on the microwave, 10 to the 6 orders lower. So we use February interferometer, we amplify 10 to the 6 times. So you can see the signal. So that is the beauty of this experiment also. You can see the results. And we carried out, we saw the differentiation and frequency shifts that is happening in the when different kind of cluttering is added and then electromagnetic frequency is applied. So if there is a natural frequency shift that we detected from the material, it means that in case there is an external application of electromagnetic field, we will be able to modify the morphology of the cluttering peak natural. So we will not use any drug. We will apply only electromagnetic field. From this data, we can say that if we apply that electromagnetic field, we will be able to create a situation where we can treat, we might treat the or experience the process of natural cleaning of the brain. Thank you very much. So this was work of Kamal Saxena, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. ¿Falta alguna?
Sí, eran dos. Sí, 22 y 23.
Si no, aquí está, aquí lo tengo. ¿Lo pongo? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pushpinder Singh. I am from NIMS, Japan. So my paper title is How does microtubular network assist in determining the location of daughter nucleus? Electromagnetic resonance as key to 3D geometric engineering. Outline of my presentation is objective, introduction, literature study, device structure, methodology, resultant discussion, conclusion, and references. So objective of my paper is that does the electromagnetic field distribution of centroid pair help in determining the location of daughter cell? If yes, then how? So in the introduction session, we will discuss about the cell division process. We know that a lot of things happen in the cell division process. Regarding it, centrosome act as the key of microtubule organizing center because centroid is surrounded by the well ordered structure like the CM, which expand and sink the microtubule to form the spindle. In a centrosome, centroids are arranged in perpendicular direction. Their arrangement defines the axis of the cell division. And maybe it also decides the position of daughter cell. Here, we guess that centroid without PCM holds the key to deciding the coordinates of the daughter cell. So here, basically, we created the centroid structure and other microtubule assembly structure in antenna simulation software and simulate those structure and detected their resonance band and distribution of electromagnetic field and verified those results by the experiment. In literature study session, there is no tool exist which can detect the live location of the daughter cell. A program is written in the genes form, but it is not suitable to determining the location of the daughter cell. Many researchers suggested that the cellular cavity between the centroid pair can shift a centrosome to the central location. Some researchers suggested that there is a pure mechanical interaction of various components that decide the location of centroid cell. Regarding the centroid positioning system, a large-scale construction program has to be written in form of a minor shift in 3D angular orientation. So, but our study is a little different to the previous. Here we simulate the gap between the centroid pair and suggested that the electromagnetic field distribution can help to determine the coordinate of the daughter cell. So in material method session, we perform theoretical study and the experimental study. In theoretical study, we use the antenna simulation software, CST computer simulation technology. So we mimicked all microtubule assembly structure in the software. Microtubule assembly structure means centroid and exonome of some flies. And we simulate those structure and determine the resonance property. In experimental case, we perform the experiment on the HeLa cell and the neuron cell. We pump the electromagnetic energy to the cell at the resonance frequency. resonance frequency and determine their cellular growth and the microtubule assembly formation in a separate 3D matrix. We observe 3D matrix by using the method scanning dielectric microscopy, which can capture the signature of how centroids are deciding to place the daughter cell. We monitor the coordinate of the daughter cell by using the dielectric resonance image of the cell. Any changes in the orientation of the daughter cell in the 3D matrix is directly related to the resonance frequency in the dielectric image. So this is a structure of centroid cell. We created those structure and the software. We used basic element like the cylinder sphere to create such a structure. We created 5 structure. First central 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are the exonome of some flies. So we created those structure, and we applied it the waveguide source or energy source from the side of the structure. We can also apply the source at the bottom of the structure. So how CST works? Basically, CST solve the Maxwell equation for each single element built in the software, and it provides the reflection coefficient and the transmission coefficient. So we have the value of the reflection coefficient, transmission coefficients. So we can easily calculate the value of the impedance, refractive index, permeability, and the permittivity, as you can see in the section C. So we build the schematic of the device and we apply the port. So if we apply 2 port, in that case we will get 2 reflection coefficient and the 2 transmission coefficient. And if we apply the 3 port, in that case we will get the 3 reflection coefficient and the 6 transmission coefficient. So when power goes from the port to the device and return back to the same port, that means that is the reflection of energy. If power goes from the source and passes through the device and appears to the other end of the device, that means that is the transmission of the energy. So reflection coefficients means ratio of the magnitude of reflection energy to the initiant energy, and transmission coefficient means ratio of the transmit energy to the initiant energy. So we detect the electromagnetic field nature across the microtubule assembly. So in case of the centroid, we apply the port at the side of the structure. In that case, magnetic field has a spiral pathway along the center of the centroid, while the electric field makes the loop, closed loop. So in case of the other microtubule assembly, there are the various type of the profile of electromagnetic field we get here. You can see here in the bottom of panel, there are the various shape of the magnetic field and the electric field. Here we concentrated on the only on the centroid structure. We observe the field distribution along the centroid for overall phase cycle from 0 degree to 360 degree. So the nature of the field distribution are almost same in both cases. When we apply the port at the side and when we apply the port at the bottom. In panel A shows the resonance bands for all 5 structures. When port is located at the site, in panel B, there are the 3 resonance curve for 3 different type of microtubule assembly. When port is situated at the bottom of the structure. So these are the field distribution profile. You can see here, this shows the clocking nature of the electric and magnetic field distribution. So from the electric magnetic field distribution, we will calculate the coordinate of the daughter cell. So we simulated the gap between the central pairs. So in panel B, you can see there are 6 centrosomes. We simulate those structures and found the field distribution profile. In panel A, you can see here there is the dark region. Dark region means null. Dark region means null field. So the movement of dark region follow the diameter of the circle. So this movement is directly related to the movement of the centroid, linear movement of the centroid. In this way, we can calculate the linear parameter R. So these dark region is surrounded by the green region. Green region is the peak of magnetic field. So the difference between the maximum intensity and the minimum intensity follows the angular changes between the pair of the centroid. So in this way, we can calculate the value of theta. Here we can see that this green region moves on the in the area of the circle. So a pair of peak movement follows the movement of one centroid when other centroid keep static. In this way, we can calculate the value of phi. So with help of field distribution profile, we can calculate the value of r, theta, and phi. In panel C shows the mechanism of calculating the value of del theta and del phi, means shift in angular parameter in both parameter for 2 cell. One cell means a pair of centroid pair, a pair of the centroids. So the cross section between centroid pair is shown here by the sphere. There is the green. There is the blue cone indicator on which centroid with varying value of the theta and phi. So this panel C shows the generalized spherical coordinate system. So we by using this mechanism, we can easily calculate the shift in linear parameter and the angular parameter. So we capture the 3D cellular matrix for the HeLa cell and the hippocampal neuron cell. So these are the dielectric resonance image of the HeLa cell, and these are the microscopic image of the neuron cell. In both panel, you can see here there the red region, red color. Basically, red color defines the location and orientation of the daughter cell. So the gradient of each red color define the value of del theta. the difference between of the maximum intensity and the minimum intensity of these red color define the value of phi. Center position of this red color bar define the value of R. So how to calculate the shift between the linear parameter R and envelope parameter theta and phi? We can simply compare the value of R and theta for both panel. So the scale bar of dielectric resonance image and the microscopic image is almost same. So, and the color code for both panel is the same. So in this way, we can calculate the value of R, theta, and phi. For the HeLa, we observe the value of theta, phi, and R as 5 degree, 3 degree, and 1 nanometer. For the hippocampal neuron cell, when it's divided, we calculate the value of theta, phi, and R as 2 degree, 8 degree, and 1.3 nanometer. So by using the color code, we can calculate the value of R, theta, and phi. So in the conclusion session, we can conclude that electromagnetic field distribution at the resonance of the centroid pair is the key to say the axis and to determine the location of the daughter cell. Junction space between the centroid can edit the field distribution profile. Basically, junction space depend on the orientation of the centroid with respect to each other. So here we are saying field distribution along the junction of the centroid is the key to determine the location of the daughter cell. These are the difference. And thank you very much for listening my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, with this we finish the activities for today. We wait for you tomorrow at 8:30 a.m.
Just let me know. Parte lo mismo, nada más. No, hazlo.